morning to all. Greetings from Singapore. How many of you here are teachers? Can you put out your hand? Okay, very good. Actually, all of us are teachers. I started my career as a teacher, and I went on to become the deputy headmaster of a school with 100 teachers and 1,600 students. And then I moved on to do teacher training, first at the polytechnics, and then I also do many different roles. I've been involved in curriculum. I've written a set of mathematics books as well, and went on to write and edit over 20 books on education. And I became a professor at a university. But when people ask me, what is my occupation? Recently I was at a bank, and they look at my record, they ask me, what is your occupation? I said, my occupation is a teacher. Yeah. You know, one of the secrets of a principal is to tell your teachers that you are a teacher. You do not forget that our key role is a teacher. Right? I want to begin with a story of a professor. A story was told about the great professor Albert Einstein. I think many of you know, physics teachers know about Albert Einstein. As you know, he was a famous Nobel Prize winner. And one day he was taking a train in the winter. And as usual, he bought his ticket and then he went up the train. But because it was a winter, he had many pockets. So when the train conductor came to Einstein to check for his ticket, he couldn't find his ticket. So after a while, he turned to the conductor and says, you know, I bought my ticket, but I just don't know where I place it. And my name is Einstein. I work as a university professor. And then the conductor said, oh, you are the famous professor. Don't worry about your ticket. And so the conductor walked off. A few minutes later, the conductor walked down the aisles of the train, and he found that Einstein was still standing up and looking for his ticket. So he went to the professor and says, Sir, don't worry about your ticket, because I know who you are. Einstein said, I also know who I am, but I don't know where I'm going. Do we know where we are going today in education? I think in this world, many of us spend a lot of time thinking who we are, but less time about where we are going. In education, it is very, very important to know where we are going, because you are going to lead a new generation of people. And if you don't know where you are going, they are going to be lost. So, education is very important. And I like to see myself as a champion of teachers. I always tell people that one of the most important factors in any successful educational system is the teacher. But society today has a lot of demands on the teachers. When the students come out of school with bad behavior, they say that, oh, the school never teach them good behavior, right? When the students go to the companies and they don't have the competence, they say, oh, the school is not up to date. They are not equipping our students with the right skills. They place a lot of demands on the teacher. But what the society needs, first of all, is always to ask themselves, how are we really treating and recognizing our teachers? So as leaders, it is very important for us to understand that we need to look at teacher development from a holistic perspective. And to have great teachers in the system, first of all, you need to have a system that recruits people into the teaching profession. People must have a sense that I want to join teaching. And this is the role for every one of us. As teachers, we should never say, oh, I'm just a teacher. Oh, please don't be a teacher. You and I need to say that teacher is a meaningful calling. Teaching is a meaningful profession. So we need to constantly try and recruit the best people into teaching. That's number one. After you bring them into the teaching force, the next thing you need to do is to develop them, especially in the initial teacher training. Because human psychology tells us, if I do not know what to do, I do more of what I know. So, a new teacher, if the teacher is not given a good development, he only know how to be a teacher by thinking of how his teacher taught him, right? Do you know it's the same in parenting? Some of us, we have parents who cane us when we were young, and we don't like to be caned, right? But one day, when your child is naughty, what did you do? You cane them. Because that's the only thing you know what to do. Why? Because you didn't have a broader knowledge of parenting and understanding the child. So, after you have recruited a good teacher, the next thing is you need to give them good initial teacher preparation. So the way we select teachers in Singapore is we select teachers, people who are strong and passionate about their discipline, people who love the subject, mathematics, physics, history. But the moment they come into the NIE, where we train the teachers, we tell the teachers, you are not a mathematics teacher, you are not a science teacher, you are not a geography teacher, you are a teacher of the learner. The most important thing is the learner. Because if you survey students and you ask students, what is it that they expect of their teacher? There's one word that always comes out, and they will tell you that good teachers care about them. Good teachers care about them. So the care is very important. And that is why if you care for the students, you want to get the best knowledge so that you can give them the best care. After the initial teacher program, the third most important thing is to understand that teachers are human beings and that the job of a teacher requires recognition through a fair compensation system. Compensation is not about the money. Compensation is how you tell the teacher what their career is like. A teacher package includes not only the salary, but also how do you provide for their development. And that is why professional development is very, very important. Teachers who have a strong sense of mentorship, induction, they tend to have a higher retention rate. Teachers who do not feel being mentored and they're just left to struggle, they burn out more easily. And that is why professional development is very key. So, number one, recruitment. Number two, initial teacher preparation. Number three, the compensation system. Number four, is the professional development opportunities. We need to structure professional development opportunities for our teachers. So in Singapore, we encourage every teacher to have 100 hours of professional development a year. Now, the 100 hours of professional development is not just about attending workshops. It's about teachers learning from teachers, learning from one another, forming communities, right? But having time to do that. So as leaders, we need to provide time for the teachers to have professional development. And last of all, we should have a good career track for the teacher. And I will elaborate more about that. But these first 5 factors, I call it the most essential factors that you must have to have the good teacher. But this is not enough. We need to be able to develop teachers with another 5 environment factors. And these other 5 environment factors is, number 1, teachers need to understand what is the accountability and evaluation, right? If I do very well, how do I develop to the next stage? So we have a career track, right? But how do you move up the career track? How do I know what am I lacking, right? So you don't want a teacher to have a experience and say that, oh, I'm a 2-year-old teacher, I'm a 5-year-old teacher, but what is your experience for 5 years? Is it 5 years teaching the same thing? 5 years teaching the same way? Or every year the teacher knows that there are some things I need to learn more, right? Maybe in the first year they learn about classroom management. And then they realize that I'm doing that quite well. Then the next year they need to realize that my lesson planning is still not so good. I need to improve more on my lesson plan. Maybe in the 3rd year, they need to realize that, hey, there are many ways to do questioning. My questioning is always a one-way questioning. Right? So there is a whole clear pathway of development and an accountability. Accountability, I always say, should not be just about the student results. Accountability is about how the teacher feels that what he needs to learn to help the student achievement even better. And to learn how best to motivate the student. And you and I can learn a lot from motivating students by seeing other people's classroom, sharing and learning with other teachers. So when I was a deputy principal of a school, I used to take, as an example, I would take some of the most difficult class. And sometimes the teachers will ask me, how did you get this class so cooperative with you? There was a time where this class, there was a gangster. You know, if you teach teenagers, big guy, all right? And in Singapore, we know some of these students, whether they are in secret society or not, because the police give us some report, and we know. And this guy is a bully, right? In the school, the students look to him. And every time the teachers go to the class, you know, in our system, we stand up and then we greet the teacher politely. But this guy, he doesn't like to greet the teacher. When he stand up, he do this. He doesn't greet the teacher. And you know, for a beginning teacher, if they handle a class like this, right, you get discouraged. And not only that, the other students will follow this guy and they will not respect the teacher. Then there will be very poor management of the classroom. But I always tell the teachers, you know, classroom management, if you learn through experience, it's very easy. You just need to know some secrets. So I share with you one of the secrets that I do. You know, every time you have these difficult students, you always call them, go and see the principal. Meet me at the principal's office, right? Yeah. So when I took over the class, one of the messages I told him is that I'd like to meet you. And he thought I want to meet him at the principal's office because these people always do something wrong somewhere through the day. I says, no, please meet me at the canteen. He got shocked. He was expecting to go to the principal's office, but I said meet him at the canteen. So he went to the canteen, you know. So I saw him at the canteen. I said, Gregory, please, take a seat, please, please. He was shocked, so he sit. Then I got the rice for him, and then I have the coffee for him. I said, Gregory, please, eat. He was shocked. He was hungry, so he eat. And I eat. I smile at him. I say, you enjoy the food? He says, yeah. I say, you and I, we are going to be in this class for a whole year, right? In a class, there can be only one leader. I am the leader, okay? That's all. That's all. I say, he was shocked. I walk off. Next day, when he go to the class, his old habits come back. He came up, he looked, the students look. Now I look at him, I smile. You ate my rice yesterday. You drank my coffee. You know, his behavior changed. The secret of classroom management is to manage the student outside the classroom. Many teachers get caught in trying to do all kinds of things in the classroom. But actually, the secret is very simple. Take out your most difficult students, meet them one-to-one outside the class, and nurture them. Because they all will respond to care, no matter how difficult they are. So, teaching is a profession where, through the experience, you learn many tricks, and you pass these tricks to one another. And that's how you become a great teacher, whether it be classroom management, design of a classroom, and so on. So, I always say, what is teacher accountability? Teacher accountability, we look at the teachers on how you care for the students, how you learn to care for the students. The other factor that is very important is school leadership. You saw from the data from OECD that the principal's leadership is very important. And I think this afternoon you will hear from a group of very wonderful, innovative, leading principals from various places. And the research shows this, that as a principal, your values, your personality is going to permeate the school. So the school leadership is very important for the morale of the teachers. The third thing in the environment is what I call the teacher symbolism. And the teacher symbol is something that is very important. And I'm going to say much more about this afterwards, but I just want to say that how you and I view teachers, how the society view teachers, is very important for the country. Because the teachers are just not teaching. The aims of education are just two things. I always say there are only just two C's in the aims of education. And the teacher symbol represents that. Number one, education is about building character. Building character. Which profession in the world today think about the building the character of the people for the nation? It's not the lawyers, it's not the stockbroker, it's not the economist, it has to be the teacher. So, it's a very important role of the teacher. Number two, competence. The role of the education is to create contributing citizens through equipping them with competence. When they have character and competence, that's where, a country will flourish, because you have the people with the right disposition and the right thinking. And of course, very importantly, you must have a future orientation, because education is not about just preparing people to meet the present. It's always preparing them for the future. Those of you who are teaching primary school, your kid who is in primary 1, they are going to enter into the workforce 16 years later. Can you imagine the change that will happen? We have to prepare them for the future. What kind of life skills, disposition that we put in them that will allow them to learn how to learn very effectively, right? And of course, very importantly, is what we call the coherence of the system. And that's where we never work alone. Educational systems must always have strong communities and partnership. That's why I fully, applaud this conference, because Aksorn organizing of this conference represent a very good partnership with schools, with communities, because that's very, very key, in the coherence of a system. So, one of the key perspectives of the teachers is, from the professional development standpoint, we always think not the deficit model. We should stop telling the teachers, oh, you are no good, you lack this, you lack that. I think we should be asking the teachers, you need to grow. What else do you need to grow? From whatever state you are, I will add value to you, I will help you grow, right? Of course, we say we try to attract the best people, but what you see is what you get, right? You already have your teachers in your system. What did you do? Well, grow people. Everybody can grow. So we need to have a growth model. In the growth model, the first thing we try to put in the teachers is what we call the ethical educator. And that is where we emphasize values. First of all, the values of the teachers. Then, of course, the competent professional. They need to understand all the competencies that they will have. Number 3, as a collaborative learner, how and what have you done to collaborate with another teacher? And of course, to be a transformational leader. Teachers are transformational leaders. In fact, teachers are leaders. And of course, the community builder. We use what we call a TEACH framework, T-E-A-C-H. And this stands for teacher professionalism. Number 2, teachers engagement. Do you know why students are disengaged sometimes? Because teachers are disengaged. If teachers are engaged, students are engaged. Isn't that true? Right? And the student can tell if a teacher is disengaged. He's coming into the classroom. He's talking to himself. Of course the students talk to themselves because you talk to yourself, right? But if the teachers are engaged, students will be engaged, right? So how do we increase the engagement of the teachers, right? Aspiration. Teachers must have the A. They really want to learn something. They have been doing good didactics, but now they say, no, I want to learn how to do good group work. Then maybe they learn how to do project work. After they learn how to do project work, they say, no, I want to learn how do we do problem-based learning, right? They always want to be learning all the time. There must be an aspiration to learn the different pedagogies, the aspiration to reach out to different kind of students. How do I stretch my students to get them to achieve even more, even better, right? That's what teachers' aspirations are, right? And of course, we have to take care of their career, and there must be a harmony. By harmony, we mean that there must be a work-life balance for the teachers. After a while, teachers need a break, and they need to have different experience. And it's not expensive to build in a system where in every school, you allow some opportunities for the teachers to take a different experience. So in Singapore, we incorporate what we call the internship kind of experience. So a teacher who is teaching science, for example, he can take a break and decide to join the zoological gardens and work with the zookeepers for about 3 months, just to take a break and learn about the real world, right? And then he can go back into the teaching again, and he feels much more refreshed. So we allow teachers, right, a kind of a very short sabbatical of work attachment, right, as a kind of variety. Others may want to pursue a higher degree or something like that. So we need to create a kind of a work-life balance for them so that they see that, it is not just a repetitive routine all the time. This is the model that I created 12 years ago at the National Institute of Education. You know that usually people talk about knowledge, skills, and attitude, KSA. But when I became the Dean of the Teacher Education, I decided that, no, we cannot just do KSA. So I changed it to VSA, but not just the V, but VQSA. V. So when people come to the NIE, and I have entertained many ministers of education, I always tell them the first thing that we tell our teachers in NIE is values. The second thing we talk about is values. And the minister will say, and the third thing you talk about is also values. I say, yes, sir. So, what about values? What about values? What do you mean by the values? I told them. And I always remind ourselves, the number one value of the teacher is that you are an expert on the learner. Nobody in the world knows how to help a learner more than you. Just like a doctor. If you are a doctor, right, your value system is that you have to do no harm and you cause someone to be able to heal. If you are a lawyer, you are a voice to the person who needs the voice. Even a criminal needs a representation. So you need to be a voice for anybody that needs it. How about the teacher? The teacher is the champion of the learner. The teacher is the one who believes that every child can learn and achieve. A teacher is the one who tells the parents, when the parents say, I give up hope, I don't know how to help this child, the teacher is the expert and say, bring the child to me. I know how to help the child. You know why? Because I learned all the best about child development. That is why as teachers, we always keep updated. We learn from the best of brain science, neuroscience, anything from the science of learning. We keep ourselves updated in conferences like this so that we know how to help people learn best. Because we believe that every child can learn and achieve. That there's always some potential, some spark in every child. So when the student come to you, they have to see you, that this person, he believes in me. I used to tell the people, in this world, historically, there are three kinds of the teacher. The first kind of teacher, you know what I call them? I call them teachers that need forgiveness. So why? Because it's better that the student didn't meet this teacher. Because there are some teachers in the system, because when the student meets the teacher and the teacher says that, you see your marks is so low, you are so stupid in mathematics. You are always so stupid. When the child hears that the teacher says I'm stupid, they believe it. And he loses all his esteem and his interest in the learning. I call these teachers that need forgiveness. Then there is another category of teachers. These are called the colorless teacher. So this is why colorless? Because teaching is just a job to them. When they come to the classroom, they teach. They get some student outcomes, right? The students do something okay. But after the class graduated, the teacher forget all about the students. The students also forget all about the teacher. They are colorless. They never color each other. But the third kind of teacher, which is what I call the right teacher, with the right calling, with the right care in the profession, I call them the imperishable teacher, the eternal teacher. Because of you, this student, when he saw how you teach, he got so interested in the subject. It shaped his whole career. Because of you, he thought that he was hopeless, but you give him hope all the time. Even when he was failing to the end, you tell him, you still can achieve. And even if he failed everything totally, you tell him that there must be another area that you can succeed. Let me help you. And they will always remember you. And you become the imperishable teachers. So, that is the value, number one. The teacher, you are an expert of the learner. Bring me an adolescent, you say he's so rebellious. But as a teacher, you understand the adolescent because you understand the psychology of the adolescent. When a person becomes a teenager, he has to rebel because he's learning to be independent. Right? If I'm learning to be independent, how can you make me dependent? Right? So, if you know how to deal with a teenager, you will not think of them as rebellious. You think of them as having a lot of energy, and you're trying to help them. I always tell the teenagers, this period of life is so important for you because it's a time of discovery. You are learning to be independent. You are finding meaning. We will help you find a meaning. right? And you do it together, but we must learn to respect, right? And you do this through proper role modeling. So that is the first value. The teacher, right, is an expert and the great carer of the learner. Number two value, I call it the value of the teacher identity. You know, a society must respect teaching. Do you know that as a mother, as a father, you are a teacher all the time? Because you are teaching your students, you're teaching your children. The grandfather is a teacher. So it is very important that a teacher recognize that the teacher identity is a very valuable identity, right? The teacher identity is the symbol of learning of the society. When students respect teachers, they respect learning. So I sit in many advisory committees. So sometimes they invite me to talk to the parents of the school. And when I meet the parents, the first thing I tell the parents is, you know, if you want your children to respect learning, please respect the teachers. Teach your students to respect the teacher, and they will respect you. They will respect learning from the wise, and learning will be valued. Sad to say today, in many societies, because people fail to respect teachers, they also fail to respect learning. And that's why you come out of a generation that doesn't learn properly, right? So the teacher is a very important symbol of learning. And that is why teachers have to be the best role model of learning. So as a teacher, I always tell my students, I'm also learning. You know, today I'm studying this book. Yesterday I read this new book. And the teachers, oh, you are still reading. You are still learning. And sometimes they're cleverer than us. And you've got to tell them, I'm sorry. I didn't know about this. You are so smart. I'm also learning from you, right? So that is the teacher identity. Value number two. Value number three is the teacher and the community. So from the very beginning, we tell teachers, when you come in the profession, you do not walk alone. Because it's very easy for teachers to fall into the isolated world of the classroom. And we tell them, no, you don't walk alone. You walk as a community. That is why professional learning communities are very important, because you come together and you share with each other the problem areas that you have, and you ask, how do you deal with this problem of this lesson plan? How do you deal with this problem, this topic? It's very hard to teach. Somebody tell you which model they use, and that's how we learn together. So you never walk alone. You don't have to worry that I'm struggling alone, right? You have a community, and we help them to be open to the community. So one of the secrets is teachers need to be open in their classroom to one another. Come into my classroom, learn something from me, help me, tell me what are some areas I need to improve. So once you have the three values right, you can build your skills and knowledge. Now the role of the teacher is changing today, but still it is very important to have good didactics, that means frontal teaching with clarity, right, with inspiration. But more importantly, a teacher is also a facilitator of learning, which means you have to teach the process, the heuristic, the strategy. In professional learning community, one of the key things is for teachers to talk about how they can make visible their thinking process. So like I always say, a beginning teacher, right, will first of all occupy themselves with classroom management and making content visible to the learner. But as the teacher progresses, he needs to make his thinking visible to the learner. And I can tell a beginning teacher, right, from an experienced teacher and an expert teacher, how? Just by looking at the way the teacher teaches. The good expert teacher always tells the students, this is the process of how I think. They don't just give them, PowerPoint after PowerPoint of the procedure without explaining that, right? In fact, sometimes it's even better. When I used to teach mathematics, I told the students, give me the problem, give me the equation, and then I try to solve it. And as I solve it, I tell them what I'm thinking. I tell them how I have thought wrongly, and so they realize that, oh, actually you will go through many processes in your mind before you came to the solution. right? It's not so simple. It's not just memorizing this, yeah. So they learn the process. So good teachers allow your thinking process. But to allow your thinking process requires a lot of skills. In mathematics, in geography, in history, there are different ways to talk about the different thinking processes. And then when the teachers are so good at that, he's an expert teacher, but still not good enough. I will tell the teacher, you are an expert in talking about your thinking process. I says, you know what is the next task you need to do? I will tell the expert teacher. I said, a good teacher is not only one who talks about the thinking process. A good teacher is one who can make the students' thinking visible. How do you make every student thinking visible? Imagine, each student, he projects out a holograph of his thinking. And looking at that, you can tell, oh, he knows this, he knows that, but some areas he doesn't know. How do you do that? You can't just do simple questioning. You got to do project work, you got to get them present, and you got to hear them. Then you know how each student is thinking. So to move to this, you need a whole different range of pedagogy. What kind of group work? What kind of project work? What kind of problem-based learning? How do we design that? Right? So that we can really see how students are thinking. Right? And that's how you move. Right? So there's a whole range of process. Then, of course, technology. You heard this morning, and I think Taiwan is very bright to say that technology that's not the key. The key is pedagogy. Because if you know the right pedagogy, right, then you have the right technology to use. So I'm going to move a little faster here now, right? So I think I don't have to define to you, because you know by now that for good teaching to happen, right, we create the professional learning communities. And it's easy to create communities because once you have the passion, 3 teachers, 2 teachers in a school, school between school, right, community of schools, the willingness to come together, and then you will learn, you know. The Western philosophy that we learn from René Descartes is, I think, therefore I am. But let me tell you, the Asian philosophy is, we are, therefore I am. Which means that whenever you tell yourself, I want to learn from the community, and you're willing to put forth to learn, you will learn, right? So of course there are many structures that can happen when we form professional learning network. So I'm not going to go through with you some of these trends of learning that is happening, but just the list there, and you can have the slides, right? You learn a lot about design thinking these days, experiential learning, even failure learning. How do we learn from failure? Productive failure. How do we help kids to see that, hey, every failure is for me to learn an error. How do I pick up that error, right? And of course, many other things. I just want to sum up that the 2 major areas that you need to emphasize in the professional learning. I will call it the big learning and the mad learning. Big learning, B-I-G, and the mad learning, M-A-D. So what is the big learning? Big learning means that in our design of the lessons, we should spend more time about integration. Help each other on, as this morning in OECD, they always say interdisciplinary learning. But I use a simple word for you, big learning, right? So when you teach your child something, it's not just about the then and now, but how does this link to many other things, right? So you need a big picture. Why? Because when you solve problems today, it's always about the big picture. So when you teach something, you always ask yourself, what is the bigger picture? And you always explain to the student why in the context of the bigger picture. Because many times as teachers, we only tell them, oh, just learn this. Oh, never mind, it's important for the exam. That's not good. What we need to tell them is why this is important in the larger context. So this is what we call the big picture thinking. Why? Because neuroscience tells us that when you think from the big picture perspective, it's actually different from the analytical thinking. The first industrial revolution talks about analytical thinking and make us very good at breaking things into small parts. And in teaching, we just do all this. We just keep building and breaking parts. But today, education must help learners see the big picture. How parts are connected. And this can be done without a lot of extra work, actually. Because if you teach science, you want to just show them a map of how things are interrelated. When people see the map, right, they know where they are going. Just like your GPS, if I only show you one route, it's not good. But if I show you the map, and where does this lead to in this bigger picture, you see things very differently. Right? So big picture thinking. The I is imagination, inquiry. You know, children are born with a lot of imagination. But when they go to school, somehow the imagination reduces. Right? So we need to recover that by putting in a lot of inquiry, by allowing students to ask questions. And teachers, we need to help each other learn how to ask better questions. And there's a whole art of inquiry. But we certainly need more I. And G is very, very important. G is the grit, resilience. We have to develop in our students not only the cognition, but the emotion. And I tell you, every day, there's just so much opportunity to provide grit in our students. Why? Because, let me tell you, learning is not just cognitive. Learning is from the heart. Learning is highly emotional. Right? Learning is highly emotional. That is why we always never make students feel lousy. You understand? We never ever feel students lousy. We always want them to feel good. If you have a student who is like sleeping all the time in the classroom, you don't go behind the student, shock the student. You know? And say, why are you always sleeping in the class? No. If he sleeps because he needs to sleep. By the way, sleep is very good for you. You know? Sleeping do a lot of recovery. And if he is sleeping in class, means that something is wrong in the home. Right? What you should do is outside the classroom and you call, John and say, John, I see you're always sleeping. What is happening? Do you have not enough sleep? And you discover things. Maybe he is working through the night. Right? He has hardship. Right? So, teachers must take care of the heart of the learner. When you touch the heart, right, you build the learner. And it is very, very, very important. In fact, there are at least 5 key emotional aspects that we must teach every child. First, and I'll do this very quickly with you, because you've been sitting a long time. Can you stand up with me, all of you? Just stand up. Put your hand to your heart. And you say, self-awareness. Yeah. Knowing your strength. Knowing your strength. Knowing the areas that you need to work on. That's the first important emotion. Number 2, can you put a hand and say goody, 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 and say manage emotions. Manage emotions. Yeah. We need to help the students to manage fear, manage worry. Because if the mind is occupied with fear, if the mind is occupied with worry, they can't learn properly, right? So you help them to really manage emotions by being positive, right? Not to worry, not to fear. Give them the positiveness. Manage anger, right? Managing emotions, right? Number 3, when I shout to 3, you join me, say, wow, and when you shout, you're going to shout very loud, because you're going to wow yourself, okay? Right? 1, 2, 3, wow! Do you feel good? Yeah. And we tell our students, the world don't owe you a motivation. Nobody owe you a motivation. You can wow yourself. You can wow yourself. That is the number 3 emotion. Next, after you wow, can you put your hand this way as if you're going to receive a big, big, big basket and say, receive people. Receive people. Right? And we teach our students that you have to learn to receive people. The psychologists use a technical name, empathy and whatever. But I tell you, it's a very simple word. Do you make the person feel received? On this note, I want to say I must thank the Thai people. The Thai people are the best in the world to make people feel received. I'm honest about this. I travel a lot in the world. I've been to many hotels in the world. I can tell you, many, many places in the world, even right to the jungles, to the best and expensive place. But every time I come to Thailand, I say, you are good in receiving people. This is a powerful emotion, because when you know how to receive people, we can build community. And lastly, can you shake a person's hands and say, build people, build people. Thank you. Please be seated. Now that's the last point before I close off. So building resilience. Some educators, they misunderstand and they always think that, oh, we give them hardship, that's build resilience. No, you build the positive emotions. And when they have this kind of positive emotions, they will have resilience, right? So the last point is, we need to help each other. How do we teach students multiple perspectives? Not just the one answer, right? Textbooks provide answers, but we always ask, what if the context change? How will the answer change? So help people to see things from different perspectives. That is a very, very important thing in the curriculum today. I think you all know, it's about authenticity. I always ask teenagers, I say, what is it that you like or don't like about the curriculum? And they always say, I don't know if this is relevant. I don't see the relevance, right? So how do we help them see the relevance? Always bring the real world to them. Always bring real world examples to them. And that is why as teachers, it's important. And as principals, you create opportunities for your teachers to experience the latest of the real world situation, the latest in science and so on. You and I need to keep track. How is biology developing? How is physics developing? How is AI relate to physics in the classroom today, right? And then we need to see them, that help the students to see this is the real world. So they want the real world. They want the authenticity. If you give them the real world and the real world projects, they always get interested. And last of all, very important, from didactics to dialogue. How do we help the students to have productive dialogue? Students like to talk, but we've got to help them. How do you have good, peer, productive dialogue so that you can learn well from one another, right? So I think I have explained all of this in the Big and Mad. Thank you very much.